What is good? We're back. We got the OGs on the block. I'm Casey. I got my man Big Co over there doing a little remote sesh. Going to talk some Dynasty running back ranks. The season's mostly over for the people in the playoffs, still forging along. You know, we got some teams going. We're excited about it, but let's talk about these rankings where we're kind of seeing these guys move up and down as the season kind of comes to a close and we move into mock draft and rookie season. So Big Co, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I like it. Like you said, we got pretty much seasons closing out here. We got the playoffs. That's always a good time. But for these rankings, you got pretty much a whole year's worth of work put into this for a season's worth of work for the teams, the players, a couple more games left. Obviously, hopefully nobody gets hurt. This is going to start working our way into the off season like you were talking about. But then the primetime games and the playoff games, with all the eyes on it, when somebody does good, it's magnified. Somebody does bad, it's magnified. So this isn't obviously set in stone. It'll be fluid for a couple of weeks as we actually finish the season. But excited to get in here and look at what has transpired in these rankings over the last couple months.
Yeah. All right, let's get it rolling. Tier 1, I got Bijan, Breece, Gibbs there. Nothing really changing for me there. I think you're pretty much on the same page, right?
Yeah, sure. Bijan started slow, came on strong. Breece Hall's had some bad luck. Jets are terrible, and Jahmyr Gibbs plays with a touchdown monster, and that's all you can do there. They're just as safe and solid RBs into the future as you could ask for. You know, the combination of production and age.
Right. And so, there will be at least one guy that's interjected maybe right into this top tier and Genty is coming. And by the time we get through some profiles of some rookies, there may be even one or two other guys that could be floating around that area. So we're looking like we're in good shape. All right. Over to tier 2 here. We have a guy who's, for me at least, reclaimed a spot in this second tier. Kind of have a CMC-like performance here. Saquon Barkley coming in the tier 2 for the running backs here, and then I'm putting Achane in there. I think, and I think that's kind of drawing the line. I think I could possibly scoot Kyron or JT up in that area, but for me right now, those two are kind of sitting by themselves. What do you think, Big Co?
Yeah, when we did this a couple months ago, it was basically that was it. It was Barkley, Achane, and then we had like Kyron and Jonathan Taylor, maybe even Kenny Walker was up there with those guys. But as the season has gone on, all Saquon is doing is maybe leading the MVP votes behind a couple quarterbacks, and he's the RB1 on the season, probably the player 1 on the season. Maybe Josh Allen jumped in front of him last week. But your combination of age and production right there with Saquon, age is a little bit higher, but not nearly old yet. And production's off the charts. Achane, just what we talked about last time. The reason I couldn't drop him down is because the receiving profile and the big running plays haven't been there for the Dolphins. They have exactly no run game currently. They're not even trying to hand off. They've been doing some 5 wide stuff even because they're giving up on the run game, which is the exact opposite of what you would have assumed was going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. Which is why fantasy's so fun, because we have no idea what's really going to happen. But they are throwing the ball to Achane early and often, and he's racking up those PPR points.
They're still making Achane a big priority of what they're doing because he is, such a mismatch. And then, of course, you have these 2 other speed demons in Hill and Waddle out there that are, hey, look, if we're going to shell this up and try to just make sure that all stays in front of us, then this underneath stuff for Jonnu and Achane and whomever else opens up, and they're using Achane in a really good way, and he's still having some okay rushing outputs here and there, but the like you said, the ability to continue to find ways to use him and his he's fits right in there with the Tyreeks and the Waddle and the electric playmaking mold of what Miami wants to do, and Tua's playing some good ball. So as long as Tua's in there, no concern for Achane for me, so I got those guys kind of alone in tier 2. And you're the same?
Yeah. Well, the if Tua's in there is a bigger if than we'd like it to be. But, if you're just kind of new to Dynasty and you've just found us, or there's probably 4 or 5 guys you could find that you find equally as confident or more confident to plug in next week to win a game than Achane, given the Dolphins up and down, but he's super young and he's as explosive as any player in the NFL, and he can catch, and he's a running back, and those are hard. All those things aren't easy to come by. Mm-hmm. So there's your quick little hey, if you're just new to Dynasty, why we're talking about somebody a tier above, in an Achane who's a tier above, like a Josh Jacobs type player right this second,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. So let's hit into tier 3. Seems like we're all trending in the same direction here. Maybe in trade talks, this might be a little bit of a value drop right here when you go from those first 5 to these and what's expected to come back when you're doing it. But still, I think a lot of these players have the ability to be up there in tier 2 just for one reason or another. Maybe just, temper expectations a little bit. Kyron Williams, who's we've been waiting for, 2 going on 3 years now to just, make sure he's not a thing, but he keeps being a thing and we love him. JT, just waiting for him to return to excellence consistently, right? I'd like to see him get more involved in the pass game. I'd like to see the Colts, get simpler things, quicker things going with, Jonathan Taylor out of the backfield, but still having a pretty productive season, right? Then you got Kenny Walker, who's been a little banged up, but went out there just on a team that seems to be morphing in front of our eyes into a very good team. You had a rookie OC out there from the college ranks out calling plays. I think Kenny Walker fits into the 3 wide kind of thing that they're trying to do really well. We've seen him be productive, just banged up here. And then Josh Jacobs rounds this tier out for me. All this guy's done is perennially be basically an RB1 his entire career. And speaking from like when we say RB1, that's RB number 1 on the season through 12. That's an RB1, right? Those
gotcha.
Are
Yep.
Right.
I like it.
So
yep.
Just in case anybody's confused on that terminology, but he's been excellent down the stretch here. I know a lot of people were dying this isn't a real contract for Jacobs. I can't see a way the Packers cut him. He's doing exactly what they want him to do, what they need him to do. And, I think you will see Marshawn Lloyd next year a good bit more, but I think Josh Jacobs is going to be just as productive and just as good. And it's just, he's one of those weird ones that people seem to root against for some reason. And he just keeps coming out there and doing it. Week 1, within a quarter, there was so many washed tweets out there from that Brazil game. And all he did in the second quarter was have like 8.9 yards per carry. And he's been very productive all season. So that's kind of my tier 3. How do you see tier 3 shaping up?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a couple months ago, those guys were right there. I think the difference making these guys be tier 3 was, Saquon's production elevated and Achane's catches elevated. I think Kyron in any given week is super, gives you just as good a chance as anybody's getting 20 points. Biggest problem right now with Jonathan Taylor, I think, is the offensive line is in shambles, absolute shambles. And, they did bench Anthony Richardson. Flacco came in, completely different type of scheme as far as like if they're the defense looking for a running quarterback, kind of mixed up the offense for a minute. Thankfully, they got AR back in there pretty quickly. And he's been doing everything the coaches could have even asked him to since then. So that's been fantastic. But as far as Jonathan Taylor goes, the dude's 25. I think he's a fantastic buy. I think he's a really good buy low candidate. He's 25. He seems older because he's been around for a while. That rookie season of his finished off so strong. That was 4 years ago, but it feels like he's just been around longer. He's only 25. I feel like he's a really good buy. And for him to be in tier 3 is not really putting him down. Necessarily. It's just that we're talking about third string centers. We're talking about 2 weeks ago, they've started 3 rookies on the offensive line with a quarterback who doesn't have the experience to even handle that situation, So, how can you're not really sliding protection and et cetera, and getting yourself in the exact right spot when your quarterback hasn't had a full season worth of games yet. And you got 3 rookies on the offensive line. So there's been a couple things going against him. Probably get 1,000 yards and got a handful of just, decent TDs, but not what we want. Yards per carry looks strong every time he goes out there.
Yeah. Love the buy low on Jonathan Taylor. Anybody you'd add or subtract from that tier?
Hey guys, a quick reminder to head over to patreon.com/the FF Dynasty to sign up for a free membership to get access to the free Discord channel. Or hit your boys with the $5 holler and get access to extra shows, mock drafts, roster reviews, ADP, and player pages. All for your pleasure.
The way I do my rankings mostly is a combination of what I think the guy's going to do on the field, but also how I feel like I could trade him around. So the biggest problem I have right this second is, like you said, the name cachet and the amount of people that out there just want to, hold down Josh Jacobs. And even Kenny Walker's been on a really nice little cold streak here, aka hurt. I think you'd be hard to find people that would give you Chase Brown if you offered him Josh Jacobs straight up. You know, so 2 weeks ago, Bucky Irvin was the hottest thing out, and we had a big discussion about Chase Brown and Bucky Irvin, you know, so it's hard not to keep those two guys lumped together. So I think the hardest thing for me for this spot here is to not have Chase Brown and Bucky Irvin right there in that tier, because either A, Chase Brown's going to be in a PPR setting. Chase Brown's going to be projected to get as many points as Josh Jacobs, and probably a tick or two more than Kenny Walker, because Kenny doesn't catch as many passes, nor does Jonathan Taylor. So, you know, right now, Chase Brown's just getting the volume, the bell cow and the checkdowns in the offense from Joe Burrow, you know, and he's got an elite quarterback. So I think that right now, for me, Chase Brown, Bucky Irvin, they just have that hype train, that tidal wave behind them, that new shiny object syndrome. They're only 22, 23 years old kind of players. And the what if they could keep this up, you know, the what if they're going to be, what if they get better? What if this, what if that, you know, the driving dynasty value conversation, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I guess this next tier for me is some of the biggest movers of, you know, this conversation that we're going to have: Chase Brown, Bucky Irving. I think Chuba Hubbard needs to come into the conversation here. And then, you know, Travis Etienne, maybe a bit of a faller here. We'll kind of get into. So this is my tier 4 here. I got Chase Brown. I got Bucky Irving. I got James Cook. I got Chuba Hubbard. I got Joe Mixon. And then I got Travis Etienne. So I don't know where you kind of already started with Chase Brown. So let's start at the top there. We'll work backwards. You know, the only concern for Chase Brown is coaching staff gets removed and maybe they do something else at running back. Although for me, it's Zach Moss comes back. Chase Brown has been out here proving kind of what he can be for this team. They have another year on Zach Moss. They need to spend money, and they don't like to spend money. There's other things that they need to do in the draft. There's other things they need to address. You don't need to address this problem. So why are you making it a something you're making a problem where you don't have one?
Sure.
Now, I'm not in those rooms. There's nothing I can do about it. But for me, I'm betting on the talent, and I'm betting on Joe Burrow to say, hey, I like this guy. I'm keeping him in here. We'll get Moss back. He can offer us a little something different. We obviously got to pay Chase. We're probably not paying Higgins. Could we, you know, I don't think we need to do anything else in the running back room. We're drafting a wide receiver in the second round, not a running back. Right.
Right. Definitely.
So that's the way I kind of look at that. So I'm keeping Chase Brown up here. And like you said, I mean, I think where we're at right now and how we're seeing both Chase Brown and Bucky Irving score points, I think they could be in this tier 3, just like I think we think a lot of guys in tier 3 could be in tier 2. So we're very fluid in kind of how things are moving around. Those two are going to be they've been the hottest guys to talk about, Bucky and Chase, that is, and they're going to continue to be the hottest guys in the offseason. We've already seen their ADP be starting to rise in all the mock drafts that we've been doing lately. Travis Etienne going the other way. He's at the bottom of this list, but you know, I think James Cook belongs in this list. The Bills have kind of figured it out. And then Chuba, with the injury to Jonathan Brooks, man, like all he's done is go out there. And again, you can make the same argument as, oh, well, are they going to bring somebody else in? Well, the worst thing I see is bringing in a veteran. We talked last night with Doug, a new member of the squad here that we're doing Patreon stuff with. And you know, maybe they bring it. Rico Dowdle would be like a name of something that I would see a veteran value coming in here and be in there, because you can get them for kind of cheap. They're going to need another running back. Maybe they do draft somebody. They need depth right now. They're hurting. But Chuba's done nothing but answer the bell for exactly what Canales wants to do, right? And we want the guy that Canales says this is who we're going to do it with, right?
Yeah, that's why we were so hot and heavy on Jonathan Brooks. And now for at least another year, it's Chuba.
Right. And then the last one, or the second to last one, is Joe Mixon. Obviously, he's should be a tier 2 guy, but just 2 years older than Saquon at this point, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think you're going to for sure get it. I mean, right now he's like almost 21 points per game from Joe Mixon. I don't think anything's changing. Maybe they could see an OC change, but like, you know, from as things go, what we're seeing from Joe Mixon doesn't look like that. You know, there's anything. We're going to have to start changing this age cliff thing that everybody's been talking about for a while, because that's, you know, that cliff's going to have to, you know, jump up a little bit or extend out a little longer here. And, you know, the other narrative I'm excited to see smashed is, you know, the nerd narrative of you can't draft these running backs who switch teams on their second team. And it's like, well, pretty much all of the best running backs in the league this year have switched teams. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry. I'm sure I'm missing somebody here, but like,
well, those four are pretty good. I think those are the top four. I think that's RB 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I think those are pretty good names.
And David Montgomery has switched teams and been excellent. We'll get to him. We'll give him his flowers for sure. But hopefully we can kind of put that to rest. When you have a good player who's not in the best scenario and switches teams, maybe we could just take everything as even, except always having to look at historical data and make your choices off of that. Like Saquon's always been good. He's in a good scenario. Look what happens. Mixon's been good. Yeah, he was good on the Bengals, but now he's, still good on the Texans. Jacob's always been good in a better situation and playing really well. So, and Derrick Henry's just seems like what a fit with Ravens. So fit maybe being more important than, sometimes these things, if we talk about LaDainian Tomlinson going to the Jets at some point, who gives a fuck, right?
Yeah, when he was 30.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry is tough on any situation, but you put him there with Lamar Jackson, that's just not fair, obviously. Right. And then Saquon Barkley had, exploded. And so you mentioned, Joe Mixon, like you said, 26, 27, 27-ish year old Saquon Barkley versus 28, 29-ish year old Joe Mixon. Taking nothing away from Joe Mixon, what he's been doing, obviously stepped into a scheme that fits him perfectly. I wouldn't say he's upgraded much because you left the Bengals and Joe Burrow, but he's just out there crushing. He's not out there reverse hurdling cats like Barkley. So, so there's your justification to be a tier down. He's a little bit older and he's not doing what Barkley's doing. So we didn't put him in tier 2.
Physically, no.
Right. Exactly. Barkley's 50 points ahead of all the running backs.
Yeah. So give me your tier rundown here. And, maybe we'll hit ETN on the way out of this tier. I guess I'll hit him right now. I just feel like he was RB3 last year. This is a really good player. The situation has soured. Everything's soured over there. They're kind of doing a little bit more of a power thing, and they like what Tank brings to the table. ETN's been a little banged up. That's a good player, and I'm not that much. If you wanted to drop him down one more tier, I couldn't argue with you too much. Huge buy opportunity. I think he's 25 years old. Like, there's still a lot of really, really good football left in Travis Etienne. And James Cook, I just feel like has earned this spot and right of the Bills kind of figuring out how to the offense that's they're comfortable running. And I think this will continue to evolve, and James Cook looks good doing it. So give me your rundown on tier 4 here, Big Ho.
Yeah, sure. Well, like I said, I think, for me, I'm pushing that Chase Brown, Bucky Irving back up into that next tier just so I can get past those two names. Just for instance, like, I don't think I completely agree with the Chuba Hubbard love that you have. And I think that given everything he's put out this year, it's probably, you're probably still ahead of the curve on people realizing and appreciating what he's got. And I think the biggest thing that you could highlight here is, like you said, what we want is Dave Canales' running back. And what we got is Dave Canales' running back. His name is Chuba Hubbard. We thought his name was going to be a different name. We thought it was going to be Jonathan Brooks. We thought Chuba Hubbard was going to be a cute 4-week play while we waited on Jonathan Brooks, And then obviously the start to the season the Panthers had, they weren't even worthy of a TV if you had 2 or 3 TVs on a Sunday, So like, they weren't worthy of watching for half the season. Here we are. They're 5-0 against the spread the last 5 games. They're overperforming is what that's, another name for that. So I think that Chuba is warranted to be up here. I don't think there's too many players that if you sit Chase Brown for Chuba, they're going to say yes. They're going to give you their Chuba Hubbard all day long and take your Chase Brown. Yes. So there's the line there for me.
Yeah. To me, understood that the value, I agree with you 100%, but like, to me, that doesn't mean that I don't view him as being equal to those guys in points that they can give me, right? Just because the public doesn't value him that way doesn't mean that I'm not going to value him that way. So I like to give people a little bit of a reward here and bump them up a little in my rankings of saying, hey, this guy can give me 16. Look, the Panthers stink too. Like, he's giving you almost 16 points per game right now, with a couple stinkers in there, but mostly really good. And he's been, good here as of late against good teams. And so as they improve, I think he improves. This is a guy who ran for 2,000 yards in college. He's an excellent player.
For sure. Yeah, I like it. I like it just on your screen, if Chase Brown and Bucky Irvin is bumped up, then in that crowd, in that company, Chuba's looking real good,
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, Chuba coming up and being in a tier with James Cook is, you've bumped him way up there. And I think, and you haven't said it yet, this recording, you say it pretty much almost every time anyway. Like you're pretty good about your tier is a tier, and the top name on the tier doesn't necessarily outweigh the third name on the tier. It's not ranked inside the tier necessarily. It's fun to see the names in the order, but it's hard enough to find a really good tier that you have some conviction over, much less ranking inside that tier. It just may, splitting hairs and pulling your hair out for maybe no reason. So I like your Chuba Hubbard love. I think if he's this high on your board, then the people that listen to you are going to be rewarded by maybe being ahead of the market a little bit. I will say now they've got a nice matchup against the Cowboys defense. I think he's projected for like 15.5 PPR points this week. If you got an opportunity, potentially, buy low, as in he could be higher if he finished the season stronger and people swallow what happened with the Panthers. And then what happens if they sign a T. Higgins or somebody like that, or, they brought in some offensive linemen to help out Bryce Young. Obviously, first couple of weeks, we didn't think that even was necessary anymore because we were going to get a new quarterback. But at this point, Bryce Young could very well be week 1 starter next year. How much improvement can we continue to see, and therefore more value going towards Chuba? So I like what you're doing there. To me, like you said, I think your conversation around Travis Etienne is the right one. More likely than not, there's a lot of good football left. The Jags are the Jags, bro. The Jags jag all the time. Right. So they can't get out of their own way. So for whatever reason, they've decided right this second, Tank Bigsby's the best running back they got. We know the Jags as an organization cannot get out of their own way. So we cannot trust that. But we also cannot just assume that Travis Etienne is going to walk into another situation and be the best running back in the world like Saquon did. But I think you're right that he's probably going to be a screaming buy. And I think if you get into a startup draft right now, I wouldn't be surprised at all if 28-year-old Joe Mixon goes ahead of 25-year-old Travis Etienne.
Yeah, the last 2 drafts combined on average, which were probably 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point, Etienne and Mixon were back to back. And I think we're gonna continue to see that gap increase between
exactly, because even the last time you did those 2 mocks, since then Tank Bigsby has been told, has been showed to us as he's their starter. Jonathan Brooks has been hurt. Chuba's going to climb that list. So Chuba's going to skyrocket. Tank Bigsy's going to skyrocket. Etienne's going to continue to go down. Mixon scoring 20-something points a week. I think that before you know it, Etienne's going to be a 9th round startup pick, and he's going to be on all of your teams that you start up next year. And I think that's the right process.
Yeah, and I think Bucky's going to be one of the hottest names of the offseason, and we haven't even really touched on him. We don't need to spend a whole lot of time. We can get to the next tier here, but people love him. I think he kind of started slow because he's a rookie, and they weren't giving him the opportunities, and then slowly it was a split, and then all of a sudden he was the man, right? And now he's just a little banged up here through his rookie season. He's figuring out how to be in the NFL and play in the NFL. Rashad White is still a fantastic receiver, but it's not even a comparison at the actual running back position when you watch those 2 guys manipulate what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I think Bucky's here to stay. They know what they got, and I think they're gonna basically try to run it back with as many pieces as they had this. Re-sign Godwin, and we're about to talk receivers, so make sure you subscribe and like and all that jazz. And we're gonna do the wide receiver rankings, but I like where the Bucs are at moving forward, and I think Bucky's gonna be a big part of it. So all right, let's keep it moving.
Yeah, just real quick.
Go ahead.
And just a quick glance on my Bucky Irving stats there. Like, there's only a couple running backs in the league. They're anywhere close in like touchdowns per rush attempt. So like you said, he's a rookie. White is not White's a big dude too, even though he's more of a pass catcher. And they throw it to Mike Evans a ton in the red zone. But Bucky Irving, to be as small as he is, he's obviously shown he's got 6 rushing touchdowns. He went out early last week. Like you said, the amount of opportunities he got early in the year wasn't much, but to have 6 touchdowns, most people have way more carries. The only person in his area The only person better than him is Zach Charbonnet, and Brian Robinson is in his area. Everybody else has way more. And James Cook has like 25 more carries to get his touchdowns, obviously on an offense that goes to the red zone every time they touch it with Josh Allen.
And they have a guy with Josh Allen who will take half of his touchdown.
Just wanted to point that out because, I mean, a guy, if you're just looking at height and weight and you're like, all right, well, he's obviously losing the goal line carries, but Bucky Irvin can get in the end zone as well. So I think you're right. He's going to get a ton of love. He's already was getting it. We're going to go through the fantasy playoffs, and then we go to the NFL playoffs. The NFL playoffs will dominate, and, that's the best theater that we have in the world. Literally the best thing that we got to do is watch the NFL playoffs as far as TV. And then, if
the Bucks can sneak in and Bucky has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns and looks great, it's easy going to screw, just like you led off with. I mean, that's always such a good point and underrated, I think, as a public perception.
Yeah.
Next tier for me, I'm going Pacheco, and I'm going Tyrone Tracy Jr., probably the same age as Pacheco. I'm going Brian Robinson here, and I'm going David Montgomery. And that's going to be that tier. Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, maybe knocking on the door. And then we have the olds and Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey kind of all being there. All these guys kind of, I don't want to say one big tier because I do think those first 4 guys I talked about, I feel a lot more comfortable with those guys because of age and moving forward and usage, contract, whatever. And then the other guys I mentioned, Ramondre, he can get going. He can be good. The Patriots just stink right now. He's signed there. So let's see what him and May can do. They can, they want to rebuild the trenches. That's always been kind of what they want to do. They're so injured there. DeAndre Swift, we've seen be very productive through a stretch here. And we know he can be productive. Ben Johnson comes over there and DeAndre Swift's up 2 tiers, right? If they can use him right. And Tony Pollard's been excellent this year with no love at all. People might be saying, why is Tony Pollard? But go check the scoreboard on Tony Pollard.
Check the game log. Check the game log. It's really, really good. And he's actually like maybe 7th or 8th in catches too.
Yeah.
So Tony Pollard quietly having a fantastic season.
All right. We'll deal with what we're going to do with the olds here at the end and where you have them. But talk to me about this next tier, Pacheco, Tracy, Brian Robinson, Montgomery. Where do you stand with those guys? Is there other guys in that tier? Is that not your tier? Are the old guys up there with them? How are you judging this last kind of block of guys here to get to 24?
Oh, yeah, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And half of that really was the fact that we've gotten down to 24, and we're not talking about Jonathan Brooks, and we're not talking about Trey Benson,
right?
And it's killing me. That hurts a lot for a lot of reasons. Fantasy dynasty teams in tow here. I've got a lot.
And
of
Rachaad White got pushed down at this point,
Right. So I guess just the top of that tier, just to talk about Pacheco. I mean, I guess at this point, we just all assumed 3 months ago, 14, 15 weeks ago, if you will, that the Chiefs offense was going to be flying high again and the Pacheco was going to be right there. Remember the conversations we had. He's part of the family now. He's got 2 rings. He's been around. He's picking up blitzes and he's adding to his pass catching repertoire. He's learning the scheme, learning the plays. He's going to be getting more check downs. He's going to get more flat routes. He's going to get a Texas route every once in a while. Let's do it. He's been gone. He's broke his foot early, broke his leg early, and he's been gone. And the Chiefs have just been winning the most incredible, wildest ways. Should have been a flag here, should have been a flag there. Can you believe that dude fumbled it? Can you believe that pass hit a bleacher and bounced back in, and Travis Kelce caught it in bounds? Yeah. I mean, just the wildest convoluted events that could lead to the Chiefs having one
all standing on an outstanding defense, though.
Crazy. Well, it's kind of going downhill too.
It's a little bit, but that's what keeps those games. They're winning 19-20, right?
Yeah,
so that defense has got to be around. But just Pacheco being back in there, he gives them a different juice. He gives them a different, attitude to that. He runs so hard. He's fast if he gets away. The pass catching was going up. I got nothing but respect for Pacheco, but not ready to put him up with those other guys. But I like him here. So
yeah, well, he's still only 25. We feel like he's been around for a while and been in the league a couple years now. If he again, same idea. The Chiefs we know are going to be playing for a couple weeks in the playoffs, right? We assume if not the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes has never not made the AFC Championship game, which sounds fake. That sounds not true. But he's never not made an AFC Championship game, so we can only imagine and assume that Pacheco is going to be playing in island games very soon. In the games that everybody's only one game on at a time in the playoffs, and that's part of the beauty of it. So we're going to see some Pacheco, and if he finishes strong, same argument next year. So I think I think you got him in a good spot, not letting him fall too far. I can agree with that. Tyrone Tracy.
Talking about Tracy, B-Rob, David Montgomery here.
Yeah, quickly. I mean, Tracy, what are the Giants going to do in the run?
To me, it's the same argument as Chase Brown, right?
Yeah.
Everything I said about Chase Brown, I could put it right on Tyrone Tracy. Like, what are you doing if you're drafting somebody else? Like, you got Singletary signed. He's a good player. You have so many issues. Fix them. Like,
so many issues.
You're good.
That's not running back.
Right. Tracy, you found gold in Tracy, and Singletary's a good player. Figure the rest of it out.
When you make a list of the reasons why you're not winning, you got to get a lot of check marks before you get to the running back spot. Before it's not the running back's fault.
And for everybody over there talking shit about Joe Schoen or whatever, and all that stuff that came out on Hard Knocks, Bo, he did the right thing. It doesn't matter what Saquon Barkley is doing on the Eagles right now. He's not helping y'all. It just doesn't fucking matter. You might have got an extra win or two with Barkley, and I get it. He's a big part of the culture and the franchise, but Bo, you got so many other problems. That was the right thing to do. Let him go somewhere else, do something. He's crushing, and he's in your division, so it really breaks your heart because you love the guy, but there was no reason to keep Saquon Barkley on this team and tie up all that money with him. You did the right thing.
I think with the size of the cap, I disagree that they should have not brought him back. The one thing about it is if you knew Daniel Jones wasn't going to really get you to the promised land, which you should have known that before you gave him all that money, then you did the right thing to not have Saquon because he would have cost you draft spots. He would have cost you draft spots.
He's also not going to be doing what he's doing in Philadelphia now.
Oh, of course not. Did he ever do this with the Giants?
And you're going to be going, why are we paying Saquon so much money? You don't pay running backs.
He would have never looked this good with the Giants because the Giants are not the Eagles. The Giants don't have Jalen. The Giants don't have Hurts, and they don't have those wide receivers out there. They certainly don't have the offensive line. Nor do they have the defense to keep you in the games. All check marks for Eagles across the board. They got a much better roster. They got everything's better for the Philadelphia Eagles
a plan than the Giants. and a roster and some depth.
Yeah. So they've been crushing the draft for years now and making good trades. So anyway,
any concerns about Tyrone Tracy?
No, I mean, you in the offseason when we have time to nitpick, I'm sure we find something that we didn't like, but he's been explosive. He's been fantastic. I mean, we know he can catch. So that's a couple of check marks for what we're looking for. And like you said, I mean, Singletary is very solid, but they've already decided that, when healthy, Tracy is their best running back. And all we're looking for out of him is a little bit of depth late rounds in the draft or cheap money free agency at this point. So I would assume that it's Tyrone Tracy's coming in starting next year, and he's going to be a big offseason talking point for the running back sleepers or
there's going to be a lot of device in or out and
and I think a lot of people are going to take the end thinking it's the hip thing to do, and they're going to point to his receiving profile as they should. I mean, that's one of the reasons I liked him to begin with, because he was super cheap, and I was getting him in really, really late rookie drafts, and why not? And sometimes that guy's worth being cut off your team very soon, and then sometimes you find a Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah. All right, we got 5 more minutes to wrap this up here. So Brian Robinson to me belongs in here. He can be as good as good pass catcher. We'll see what Eckler comes back and see what could be there. But from what they're trying to do and how they're approaching stuff, I like Brian Robinson and David Montgomery in here. Agree, disagree?
Completely agree. They're about as you can bank on their production. I think Jaden Daniels has been huge for Brian Robinson, and Brian Robinson has been huge for Jaden Daniels. It's a great little marriage there for those two guys, and I look forward to them continuing to improve together.
Yeah.
And David Montgomery's they're on. He's basically the coach's twin brother.
Yeah.
Right. Like they are each other, and he gets the first carry of every game. I don't care if Jahmyr Gibbs scores 7 touchdowns next week. Dave Montgomery's going to catch the ball first because that's their run the ball first because that's their philosophy. But yeah, Montgomery's a beast, and it's a perfect situation for him. And the Lions, they're lucky to have him.
Yeah. All right. So how are we handling these last couple of players here? You putting the olds in Kamara, Henry, McCaffrey up here? Would you rather have any of Swift, Ramondre, DeAndre, Swift, James Conner, Aaron Jones, Najee? What do you just give me your take on kind of this last like kind of 4 or 5 spots here and how you view when you get to this point where these kind of running backs are left, how are you handling it?
I think I could do this pretty good here. Let's see.
All right.
if we had to win, if I had to pick one guy that wasn't old like Derrick Henry, it'd be Tony Pollard. Doesn't get enough love for what he's doing this year. I think the hype was so high on him. He burnt so many people in Dallas last year. I think people put some stink on him and they just don't want to do nothing with him. So you'd have to go back. If he's not on your fantasy team, you don't know how good he's been.
Right.
And there's no Titans fans out there, so you wouldn't even know. I think if I just had to pick one right this second to go out and win, and even though it's Dynasty to help me next year, I want Derrick Henry / if you want to call it Kamara, because he's catching the ball and he's paid to be in a position for the Saints, brought him back and paid him. The big caveat here is I think if I just had to make a pick and it had to be anybody on that list, I just called a couple names. I think I just would take Christian McCaffrey ahead of anybody else left. We've gotten this far down the list. I think I'm just going to take Christian McCaffrey and just say, if he's healthy for another year or 8-week stretch, or maybe he's dinged up, but can he take the Matt Forte role for a year or two? Can he just catch a ton of passes and not run the ball so much? I think I'm going to take Christian McCaffrey from here and it's a home run cut. If I swing and miss this late in my startup, or for this much, if this far down the list, whatever corresponding trade value this is, at this point, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey because if it hits, it will hit huge for me. And if not, you circle the wagons and call it a loss.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think Alvin Kamara is probably one of the first things, but Christian McCaffrey, once we get down here, depending on where the value settles in for McCaffrey, I could see myself ending up with a lot of McCaffrey again this next year.
You should be. You should
right.
be.
Because I think it's going to be 6-ish round where he's going to end up settling in at, because there's going to be so much uncertainty. There's going to be people who are just telling you he's done. He's all off season. And if there's enough big guys, big conglomerates telling you that, then that's what the public will believe. And there'll be enough value for me to, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But like you said, Christian McCaffrey can be somebody that you could line up and catch, 80 balls and not really, and only run, a fraction of where he's been. You plug those other two guys in, and we always fantasize about that happening, and it never really does. But if anybody would to do it, it would be Shanahan, right? If anybody I trust to kind of do something like that.
Very true. And I would be surprised if it really is settled in the 6th round. I think it would go a little farther than that.
Even further down?
I think so.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. So you take the olds over a lot of those, over the Stevensons, so that'd kind of be maybe your next tier, that Alvin Kamara, McCaffrey, Henry area, most likely.
Yeah, I want that high. Give me that high end production for hopefully 24 more months, right? Give me a year or two of a stud I can put in my lineup and help carry my team forward while I figure it out. And as in, we've gotten to the point of the running backs where I can just say there's a lot of sameness. When you get to that position in the wide receivers a lot faster. And I think there's just not a lot of running backs you feel good about right now. And I think there's more than there were last year at this point. And then, like you said, you bring in some good rookies, and this is going to be a fun list in a couple of months after we get some rookies in here, get some after the NFL draft, get some landing spots and some draft capital and all that fun stuff. We mix them in. I think this is going to be a really, really nice offseason of running back talent and, combination of talent and age and production and all that fun stuff. We'll have a lot to sort out.
Yeah, I like it. All right, give me, before we get out of here, last note, give me like your favorite of, I think as we get past this next group, you have Connor and Javonte Williams, Aaron Jones, Najee, J.K. Dobbins, Jalen Warren. there's some Austin Eckler, there's guys in there, Spears, Singletary, all those guys. But for the most part, I think it becomes Rico Dowdle. But I think it becomes a big group of the high class backups are like a big chunk of the next guys. So give me maybe your two favorite like guys, and then they're probably, some of them will end up being a little higher than that, but like 10th rounder later kind of guys. And I know we're shooting way, but your favorite two backups that are quote unquote backups right now, who would those be? That would be kind of like the first two off your board. Like, hey, I might take them over, somebody like Austin Eckler or something.
Definitely. Well, I've recency bias here right in front of our faces here. For me, it's Zach Charbonnet. I was trying to give Bucky Irvin props a little while ago. And in doing that, the stat I was showing for Bucky made Charbonnet look so good. It's like Charbonnet's got 7 touchdowns on 97 rush attempts, which, obviously that's a small sample because he doesn't have a ton of rushing attempts. But Kenny Walker's missed 3 games this year. And Charbonnet's got 17 points, 25 points, and 38 points in those 3 games that Kenny Walker missed. And in the last one, he obviously had the 50-yard run for touchdown. So take out his best play, and he still got a 25, point day with 7 catches for 59 yards on top of what would have been 80 rushing yards and a touchdown if you took out the 50-yard rushing touchdown. And really, to me, it's because he had the terrible-ish rookie year on a team that, Seattle was supposed to take a big step forward because 2 years ago, remember, Geno Smith was all the talk. He came, came back. He didn't wrote back. They wrote him out. We wrote him off and he didn't write back. And I love the story. And you got to be happy for Geno, and I'm happy for Geno again this year. They changed offensive coordinator, like you talked about at the very beginning when you were talking about Kenny Walker. And, Charbonnet's just had a fantastic little bounce back season here where there were games. And one of the reasons why he was on top of my list here is because I got a team that didn't have any running backs and built purposely to not have any running backs and starting Charbonnet every week. And he kept, sneaking into the end zone or getting a couple passes here and there and just actually scoring points for me, which was nice and made me pay a little more attention. And we've act like you've been here before, right? We've done this so many times. You and I, we've been talking on this show about this kind of stuff for 8 years, right? Like you can't go and trade for Charbonnet today, right? Last time he stepped on the field, it was 38 fantasy points. Like that's not how you do it. But wait a week or two. Kenny Walker comes back. Charbonnet's back on the bench, hanging out here and there. Obviously, you think he played well enough to get closer. Maybe he's got a 60. Maybe he's on the 40 side of a 60-40 split, but Seattle probably doesn't make the playoffs, so you probably can, if you could sneak by and just end the season where if Charbonnet doesn't have any, but he's going to get a start this week, so that conversation is kind of might be moot here in a couple days.
Yeah.
So I like Charbonnet a lot, and I think if we could have had this conversation last week, it would have had a lot more hammer to it because we could have gotten him a lot cheaper than the week after a 38 point for performance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the idea of Charbonnet as one of those guys. I think, I'd stay right there in the NFC West for, any of the Niner backups as, Garendo or Mason as top off the list as backups. Corum's got to be right there because of kind of what I think the usage would be for him. And I think he's a good player. And Ray Davis, I think is right there as well. So, he's shown good stuff in his rookie year. If anything happened to Cook,
it seems like the Jags they don't want us to not talk about Tank Bigsby.
Yeah.
So you got to put that. There's that little couple, and just I know we got to go. The Niners backups. This shows you another reason why. Like, let's say coming into next year, they're saying Christian McCaffrey's healthy. If you're in a startup or you get the opportunity in your existing leagues to pick up Jordan Mason for cheap, you got to do that. Depending on how Garendo ends the year here, as cheap as possible, right? If I'm in a startup next year and those guys are down on the list, I'm taking both of them. Even if whether or not Christian McCaffrey's on my team or not. The more the merrier. Put a couple of those backs on.
Any of these guys we just talked about, you prioritize if you have the back that they correspond with. I know some people don't play like that. I do, but also doesn't mean that I won't prioritize those guys otherwise. So I like it. All right, cool. Let's wrap this thing up. We're going to hit the wide receivers, which means you need to make sure that you're subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, please do so. Be sure to like, comment below on anything that you like, didn't like. Let us know. 5-star review if you're listening on the pod. If you haven't already, come on. Help your boys out. And then, of course, if you want to support in the ultimate way, you can hit us up at the $5 holler on Patreon, get you access to the Discord. There's also a free Discord you could hit up. But lots of great perks going on over there. So come check it out. Until next time, I'm Casey. That's Big Co. We're the FF Dynasty. Peace.